Hi, I'm Damien Chazelle. I wrote and directed Whiplash.
I'm J.K. Simmons. I play the bald guy. I love that Right Away logo, by the way. Right Away Films.
Another film that you were in.
Yeah, briefly. A little Clooney silhouette there.
Brief but memorable. I mean, that leads me to, I guess, the person who brought us together.
Indeed.
Mr. Jason Reitman.
Young Mr. Reitman.
I'd initially written this script, and, you know, it's a jazz drummer script, not the easiest thing to convince people to finance, and so I was sending it all around town, anyone I knew, anyone I didn't know, and it wound up through sort of circuitous route in the hands of Helen Estabrook and Jason Reitman. And I think in fact, I still have the email, the very first thing they suggested, as soon as they were, I don't even know if they were officially on board yet, was, what do you think of JK for Fletcher? And there was just something, I think it especially had to do with the roles you had played in Jason's movies that made me love the idea, even more than if you had only done stuff like Oz.
Right, cool.
Because there was that surprise element that I wanted. I wanted a little bit of that sort of like,
Juno's dad, the dark side.
Juno's dad goes fucking nuts.
And here's young Miles Teller, who, I thought was going to be here today. Apparently it's only 11:30 in the morning, so he's probably hungover in his own dried up puke at this point. It's kind of how Miles rolls.
Probably a fair picture.
Since he's not here, basically this commentary will largely be at his expense.
Yep. Largely character assassination is what I'm after here.
Much like my role in the film.
People will realize just how similar to Fletcher you actually are.
And there I am wearing my own clothing, because when we shot the short version of this film, there were, I think, $11 in the wardrobe budget, and I let the other actor have that.
No, the $11 actually just went to my salary.
Well, it was your salary for the short.
Yes, yeah.
Doubled it for the feature.
Yep. Oh, no, yeah, we had a luxurious time on the feature.
One of the really cool things about the casting of Miles, and Damien had Miles in mind from the beginning. As he was writing this, it was shortly after Rabbit Hole had come out. Damien did not know that Miles had been playing the drums since he was 15 years old. And basically, between Damien and another teacher, they had 3 or 4 weeks to prep Miles and turn his cheesy rock drumming into accomplished jazz drumming, teaching him how to use his left hand. And
yeah, if you notice Miles' left hand, he's doing what's called traditional grip, which is not even jazz drummers these days actually normally don't use traditional grip. They normally use matched grip, where both hands are matching. They're both doing the same thing. And it seems like a sort of simple thing to kind of alter in your posture, but it actually dictates a whole different physical approach to the drums. And I remember when Miles first started learning this stuff, for a moment it almost didn't matter that he'd had experience in the drums before, because he looked just like a beginner. So I have video footage of him looking very worrisome to my eyes.
Oh, so blackmail footage
on the
basically.
drums. Total blackmail footage. Yeah. And then something clicked. You know, at a certain point, he got adept at the grip, and as soon as he was adept at the grip, everything else followed, because Miles is just a sponge. He's so good at picking stuff up.
Yeah, he
really
still
quickly.
owes me money, actually.
Well, that too. Yeah, he's a sponge and a terrible human being, but he's wonderful at sort of imitating and picking stuff up like just nothing else. And he's a good dancer. He's got good rhythm. So everything else kind of followed. And suddenly, I remember being so excited when I actually came in about a couple weeks into his rehearsals. Came into the rehearsal room, saw him playing, and suddenly he was a drummer. He was a jazz drummer.
This, to me, complete non sequitur. This sequence here justified our going to New York for a day, even though all my New York stuff was cut. There's such a good feel and a throwback feel.
Well, we just wanted you along just for moral support.
For moral support, yeah. And plus, I got
this
to go.
This is actually L.A.
Yeah,
but
irony. Everything up to this, all those exteriors were sort of established the New York vibe, and the trip to New York was worth it for me because I got to go to 2 boots. So.
Well, there you go.
And I remember Melissa.
You sent me a picture of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, Melissa, but actually we're establishing our 2 main supporting actors right now, Melissa Benoist and the great Paul Reiser.
You okay?
Yeah. What was fun about sort of, filling out we started out by casting you, and and Miles, and then it became a matter of figuring out who made sense opposite these people. Melissa auditioned and just blew me and everyone away with her audition. I remember it was like the end of a long day of a lot of auditions, and I was kind of sort of in a daze. And
Everybody's favorite process, by the way, auditions.
Oh yeah, no, I mean it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I get to scream at people, and it's great. No, I mean it was. She came in and she immediately, it became immediately apparent that it had to be her. And Paul Reiser, I mean, obviously I've loved since back. I love him in Diner. I love obviously Mad About You and Aliens, but what actually reminded me of him is I watched the Soderbergh movie Behind the Candelabra, where he plays a lawyer. And it's a very kind of comical performance, very sort of in the pocket, but really beautifully human and so understated, so kind of subtly observed.
Yeah, I think people who know him from his comedy stuff, and of course, Damien's been on the planet less than half as long as I have, and has seen 10 times as many films. So I never even saw the Soderbergh film you're talking about, but I'd seen enough of Paul's work.
You've heard of Soderbergh, though, right?
He's some guy who, what does he do? Something with movies.
Yes,
right?
Yes. Okay, good. I was afraid there for a second, but no, you.
I mean, I knew enough about Paul's work to know that he was going to be a wonderful choice to play Miles' dad. Lovely insert there on the jealous Andrew Neiman looking at.
You'd be surprised how long we worked on the ear insert. There was ear, there was eye, there was insert on kissing. I mean, it's all about kind of trying to figure out a fast shorthand in the beginning of a movie to get into the mindset, the way of viewing of Andrew. And that also actually, going back to the New York stuff, that dictated how we shot that. Everything about the New York images at the outset were about showing New York less as it really is now and more as it was in 70s movies, where it was all about New York, the scary crime capital. So a lot of blacks and greens, a lot of fluorescence, and just a lot of buildings towering over you. I remember how New York used to feel when I was a kid going there. I grew up in New Jersey, and I'd go into New York with my mom sometimes, and just coming out of Penn Station, right in Midtown, which is where we shot most of that New York stuff, just looking up immediately at these buildings that looked like gargoyles just staring down at you. That was the feeling in New York I wanted to capture, and that it also dictated a lot of the interiors that we wound up doing in L.A. This is in the Palace Theater in downtown L.A.
Yeah, almost all of our L.A. shooting was downtown, so it
which has that kind of seedy grandeur sort of feel that New York used to have.
Came as close to having that New York, especially that sort of anachronistic New York vibe, and especially when you're down there for 16 hours and wrapping at 4 a.m.
when you're hearing the sirens that start going.
Hold the roll.
Yep, the shootings. I mean, we joke, but I do remember at a certain point in the shoot, they had to start instituting an actual shoot protocol for people leaving set. Like, people weren't allowed to walk to their cars, I think.
Yeah, no, we had to. Some people had
when we'd be doing night shoots,
escorts.
So
we just saw Nate, one of the other. We just seen both the other actor drummers in the movie.
Yeah, Nate Lane plays Carl. He was in the short film that J.K. was in as well, which is what we did to kind of help raise money for the feature. And Nate was that perfect, combination, an actual trained thespian, but also a professional drummer. So he not only slipped easily into the role, he also became Miles's drum coach on set. I mean, I was there as well as a drummer myself to kind of oversee stuff when I could, but Nate was sort of by Miles' side a lot, and Miles based a lot of his style on Nate's style, which again is sort of old school traditional grip jazz playing. And then and Austin Stoll, who plays Ryan, or as you like to refer to him, the Leprechaun,
we'll get to that.
Is actually not a redhead, and initially we were just looking for redheads, and Austin. Again, it was a matter of in auditions. We just did a lot of improv with him, and the funny thing is he's such a nice guy in real life, but so good at playing an utter tool.
much like myself, that same range of being just a stunningly wonderful human being, but being able to play such a raving asshole.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's probably the only person who's not a stunningly wonderful human being on the set was Miles.
Pain in the ass, but the end product was worth it. Love the shoe shot.
Yes.
And there's another one coming up. Damien did such a great job of establishing my character by other people's response to me. And in this scene here, and then in the earlier scene that we were blathering over, where we see my silhouette in the doorway and
right.
everybody paying attention, and then in a scene to come where I enter a studio band, the top band for the first time. It's so much of the movie lives on people's reactions to what's going on. We'll see that again when we get to the scene with, well, I don't want to give it away in case you haven't seen the movie yet, but another scene with Miles and Melissa.
I hope they're watching the movie for the first time with commentary.
Yeah, with us blathering on
over.
over.
Great way to.
And this scene, this was
everyone
really
dies at the end.
This was fun to shoot because again, we had these musicians are real players,
and they're all the stuff we're actually this is all live playing.
Yeah, so it was a combination of what he wrote and then of what Damien wrote, and then sort of responding to exactly what came out of somebody's horn, or in this case, off the kit.
The one other shout out I want to give is to Damon Gupton, who's off screen right now,
yes.
But plays the Nassau band conductor. And I kind of modeled him to a certain extent on. I was in a lower. I was in my school. There was Nassau band and studio band. I even borrowed the names, and I developed this really nice relationship with the Nassau band conductors. This really sort of sweet guy, and Damon. Damon just has such a kind of compassion in his face, and he's just in so many ways the opposite of you.
Right. Yeah.
And
a nice jazz vibe. And again, he's just a good actor, so you get that sort of that same anachronistic feel from him, that you were looking for in the movie.
Yeah, he knew the lingo. He knew. I mean, a lot of the stuff he was saying in the earlier scene of rehearsal was just stuff he came up with. I just kind of written bare bones sort of directions for him, and he just came in, and he's a musician himself. So he was able to just fill out the character. It's one of those sort of small roles that I think really pops because of the right actor.
I love this shot, by the way, that it gets brought Miles to me over the back of my head, never left Miles, watches the back of him turn around and just watches him absorb the whole reality of what happened, and then incorporates Ryan also at the end of the shot.
Ryan looking somewhat disgruntled.
And in this scene here, you will notice, very French, if I may say, Monsieur Chazelle. The whole scene lives right here. It's a two-shot, and it was another scene that Damien had scripted, and the actors took the script, and he gave them enough leeway with it to sort of make it their own, and just be so comfortable and so human and natural.
And this was we joke about how fast we had to shoot this movie, and how it doesn't give you the option to do lots of takes most of the time. This was one of those scenes where it took a while to get the rhythms right, especially because I sort of knew I wanted to play it all in one. And I think, the initial takes were often what I find is kind of nice is to sort of, you start off with a couple takes where you're really hewing very closely to the script. Then you kind of give the actors complete reign to just literally do whatever they want. And then you sort of wind up in this kind of halfway point where you're walking over the beats of the script, you're getting the beats of the script, but they're giving their own inflections to them. And so I think this was probably a take that was somewhat later in the process. It was probably the second to last take or so. But they just developed this kind of rhythm.
And this is such a great shot here, pulling Miles away and, watching his smug little "I did it" smile there.
The little "I did it" smile that's about to get slapped out of him.
Oops.
Quite literally.
Sure, my alarm clock didn't go off. All right. This is art imitating life here. Miles, drunk, passed out at home, looking exactly like that as we speak, except with a little dried puke around his mouth.
Oh, Miles, I hope he doesn't listen to this.
Oh, he will.
He will rue the day.
It'll be too late, though. By the time he hears this, we will have moved on. Well, you'll be working with him.
I know. Can you believe it?
Miles and Damien are
signing up for the Miles wagon yet again. No, I mean, I think I'm going to take a brief moment to not insult Miles, then we can get back to it.
Sure.
Go
ahead. I'm gonna take a potty break then.
Cool. The thing about Miles that I think I just find myself endlessly fascinated by is just he's got these eyes that you know, enables a movie like this to live in close-ups. He's got these eyes that are so full of emotion, so expressive, can do so many different things, but in such a subtle way. And really, I mean, this is a tough role because most of this role is actually listening or reacting to this kind of force of nature, which is Fletcher. And I think a lot of actors could have just sort of wound up existing in the shadow. He doesn't have quite as much dialogue as Fletcher. In fact, he communicates a lot of his emotions through the drumming. And so it's a much more kind of physicalized, less vocalized performance. And for an actor of his age, it's just rare to find someone who, normally you have to kind of have a face that's weathered a lot of stuff to kind of have that sort of expressivity. And he's able to just be, you know, boyish when he wants to be, vulnerable when he wants to be, cocky when he wants to be, but express all that stuff just through, not through dialogue, but just through his face.
In real life, he specializes in cocky.
In real life,
he doesn't
cocky
do the
is
other
definitely
two so much,
yeah, right. So I remember, you know, for this I just drew a lot from stuff that I remembered my first day, and you know, I was in a sort of cutthroat competitive jazz ensemble, and I remember my first day in there. I remember there you are with the shoes. I remember the
right now we see
the band leader coming in.
all the faces.
I remember everyone getting silent.
We see my hideous mug here, but then we see.
I love how you take off the earbuds, just how you place your jacket so.
He's a precise
deliberately.
human being, yes.
Yeah, there's something really so elegant about it. I mean, that was another thing that I think, you know, the wardrobe was really your idea. The sort of the black, the T-shirt, but it also obviously brings to mind dance, and there's something so physical about your performance as Fletcher that was not on the page. You know, the words were on the page to some extent, but the whole physical apparatus of the character was not, and you turned him into this kind of this sort of evil Fred Astaire, Fred Astaire gone to seed.
That was an example right there of, you know, a little close up on Miles that tells us so much, you know,
Yeah,
about his you know, struggling to feel like he belongs right there in that moment.
and then all these guys are, you know, other than Miles, everyone here is a real musician. You know, Nate is a musician and an actor. Most of the other guys had never been in a movie. Some of them had, but most of them were actual music students in the area or professional musicians. And so we were able to kind of get into the groove of doing these scenes with these guys actually playing. So sometimes what you're hearing is post-dubbed or pre-recorded, but when we were actually on set, you know, these guys are actually blowing sounds in their instruments, and they actually know what they're playing. So I think for you and Miles, it helped create this, and for me as well, to be honest, I mean, it helped create this feeling of actually being in a band room. We were living in this was a set, it was all built, so it was definitely not a real room at all. And so we tried to kind of make it feel, after a while, that we were just at band rehearsal with a very mean conductor.
And it really did too, and it was nice that Miles had you know, the drumming background, and I have a musical background. I studied music in college, so we both were able to establish a little credibility with these guys who really played. And there were extended periods where we were really cranking. I keep having to not say we were really rocking. We were really jazzing in the room there, both here and then with the pro band later on at Carnegie Hall.
And the whole color palette of this room was something that the DP Sharon and I talked a lot about. The short that you and I had done, JK, was had a very different color palette. It was actually more based on what the band room looked like in my experience, my own band room, which had been white walls,
or neon, and
right, yeah, like big fluorescent and
yeah.
big open windows, a lot of whites. And for this, we decided to go kind of 180 and really give it this windowless, claustrophobic sort of feel, and yet there's still a beauty to it. There's something about how these top lights and these orange lights or yellow lights kind of bounce off cymbals and off people's
and an
faces.
old school feel too.
Yeah, there's a real. It's just very beautiful to me. This kind of, you know, brown on amber on yellow on black.
I thought you were talking about me
color
as
range.
I approached the camera there. That was a beautiful shot.
That goes without saying, though. Your face is always a marvel.
My beautiful head.
And then once we figured out the palette for this room, that sort of determine the palette for everything else. But I remember we spent so long looking for a room that looked like this. We did lots of location scouts looking for the perfect band room, and we just couldn't find it. We'd find rooms where the wooden walls were too dark and they would swallow up too much light, or where the room itself did not give us enough room to play around in. And eventually we decided to just build it. So this is also at the Palace Theater. We're literally on the stage of the Palace Theater right now, and our incredible production designer Melanie Jones, with a negative budget, somehow managed to build this entire thing for us, and we lived here for a week.
Yeah, and it really created the environment for us. There's also my office adjacent to this was part of the set too that we,
which was a scene.
Yeah, there was a long scene in there. Now in the final cut, we see it only briefly. And this, my first victim here, CJ,
who somehow signed up to be the victim again after
right. He had
CJ
done the short
had been
too,
in the short.
after I'd spit in his face on the short accidentally.
Oh, of course.
Yes.
And this, I think, again we see. Yeah, there's me being loud for the first time. And we see Miles. That's such a great shot there. It's like, oh my, what the?
Yeah, what the fuck did I walk into? I remember you and I talked about, speaking of screaming, there's a lot of screaming that Fletcher does in this movie, and we tried to, but I think we wound up utterly failing, and somehow your voice still, I'm still amazed that you did it. We tried to, kind of initially partition out these screaming sort of sections so that your voice wouldn't, basically to give your voice a break.
Yeah.
And because, for example, like of this set that we had to live in, a lot of the screaming takes place in this set. So it wound up being a lot of back-to-back. Like this week, I'm sure, was the week we shot in this set was probably particularly hard on your vocal cords.
Yeah, but I appreciated the efforts to break it up. And it still did end up broken up some. I can't remember where it is, but there is one scene where I can sort of hear, when I'm not screaming, I can sort of hear that my voice was a little fragged.
The toll.
And I try, I'm a trained actor, and I have all my, I used to sing, and I have, proper vocal technique and all that. But for this screaming, it just had to be so 100% balls out that there was no question of technique or of trying to do it correctly. It was just.
I think the only concrete direction I remember giving you before the short. I remember we were in a parking lot the day before the short, and you asked me. I think you asked me sort of, so how far do you want me to go on some, when it says in the script here he screams, how far do you want it to go? And I just said as like farther than humanly possible. I want it to be inhuman. I want it to be animalistic, and I literally think that's the only thing I remember actually kind of concretely saying, because I remember day one of the short you showed up. And you were so the character. In fact, it wasn't even necessarily the character I'd written. It was better than the character I'd written. It was this fully realized version of what had been sketched on the page. And then that, of course, obviously gave me a sort of sense of what you would do in the feature. And the feature felt like we just got to enrichen that character. We just got to sort of expand on and deepen that character over the course of 4 weeks instead of 3 days.
And going back to that, what was on the page, Miles and I have expressed this many times to each other, and as we've done, we're in the middle of doing screenings, and the film's about to be released now as we record this. We keep coming back to people say, what was it that attracted you to this? How did you develop this character? And for both of us and for the vast majority of the people who were involved in this project, it was all about what Damien put on the page to begin with, and we felt like our job was just to not screw it up and lift it off the page, and then be in the room together, be in the moment together, and which all these actors did in this film. Obviously, Miles was the one that I got to work with the most, but Nate and everybody that I had a chance to interact with in this film brought a nice level of both preparation and spontaneity, which is the environment that Damien created for us, and which is sort of what jazz is all about, which is a beautiful thing. And yes, the infamous moment that I wish nobody knew about when they went to see the movie is approaching here.
You gotta sell tickets. It is fun to play with the I mean, I know me and the editor and I, Tom Cross.
Little trouble there.
This is one of those moments that you have to admit you have fun with in the editing room because it's like knowing the bomb's about to go off, but the character doesn't. But maybe he's starting to realize there's a fuse, and you're slowly building that knowledge. And it's all about Miles's face kind of slowly realizing that. And also what I love is the face of Nate Lane behind him, who is just, I mean, if you look at him, he is just chewing scenery,
well,
but in this wonderful way of just he's having such a good time that this little upstart that he was worried for a moment, I think, that Andrew actually was good and was maybe going to cost him his seat, and now he knows, this is going to be a delight to watch.
And seeing this, or being in Miles' shoes, in Andrew's shoes, having seen the outburst with the trombone player is adds that level of sheer terror here, as I'm being very understanding and just trying to help him get it right here, Wait for my cue.
Exactly.
The guitar player in the background, too, is like, oh, shit.
It is so funny. If you just spend the scene looking at other people's faces. But that's definitely what the trombonist instant gives you. It gives you that sort of, it's like it's like your first act of violence in a violent movie, and then it buys you the ability to play around with that threat, because we know the threat is there, but we're not sure exactly where it's going to come from. And so you want to milk it. I mean, I really wanted to milk the tension in these sort of scenes and just stretch it as far as you can, just sort of like a spring. People sometimes talk about sort of creating tension that way, and you're just waiting for the thing to shoot back.
That's such a great shot of Miles. Now, in most movies, you're going to see, you're cutting back and forth between a kind of a waist-up shot of me, full front, and that profile shot of Miles, which is just, and this is my favorite part of the movie. The slapping of Miles. But
we spent a lot of time on these slaps.
We did spend a lot of time on these slaps. Many, look at the red cheek there. Many slaps.
Yeah.
But that's good, because I've already slapped him 3 or 4 times by then,
Yeah, the red cheek is totally justified.
Yeah, and now a little wuss starts to tear up. Oh boy, this scene was fun.
This was as actually, I mean, I think it's a lot of people might know this was the scene of the short. So JK, you got to do this twice.
Yeah, smack a couple different actors around.
But we
now here comes coming up now soon is the single tear moment, and this is one of the things that as I watched it in the theater, which I've been able to see a few times. It's one of those where if you were on stage doing a comedy, you would be able to hold for the laugh, because there's a brilliant line here that is almost never heard. I say the thing about the single tear.
Right.
Are you one of those single tear people? And that always gets a big laugh. And then the line that follows that up is, what do I look like, a fucking double rainbow to you? Which is one of my favorite lines that Damien wrote. Here we go.
Sure, no one hears that, but now they will.
Do I look like a double fucking rainbow to you?
Of course, maybe that line's already dated. You know the YouTube video that it refers to.
Well, only because you told me about it later.
But it's actually okay. Double rainbow is just a funny word, even.
Yeah. No,
regardless.
It works whether it's a specific contemporary reference or
I remember when one thing that was kind of great for me working, doing the scene, even the first time when we did the short, I'd initially written this whole stream of dialogue in the script as just delivered at a nonstop kind of, in my mind, delivered at a nonstop sort of volley at full volume pitch. And actually what you did was you wound up shaping it a lot more so that...
Well, I took a breath once in a while. Excuse me.
Yeah, so you utterly ruined it. No, but it makes stuff like the single tear line, that said at a whisper is so much more humiliating than it screamed out. And that's actually one thing that I think is really sort of, was fun working with you on this character of sort of figuring out which lines are actually delivered at full volume, which are sort of whispered, and a lot of the scariest moments I find with your character and with Fletcher are the softest moments.
Yeah.
Or even the seemingly nice moments, the moment in the hallway before that scene where you're just kind of telling them to have fun.
One of my favorite little
Buddy
Rich
actually. People ask me sometimes, "Oh, did you come up with that?" No. Buddy Rich actually said that, and he said a lot of stuff very much like that. Buddy Rich is a fount of one-liners.
And the jazz musicians in the audience always appreciate that 2 seconds on screen. And this is this is just another, I'm going to go on about Miles being a good actor. He's a kid who's, obviously he's a movie star, and his star is on the rise, and that's a beautiful thing, and he's enjoying every second of that. As a matter of fact, he's, as we said, hungover and sleeping in his own dried puke right now because he was out enjoying that last night. But the kid is also a trained actor, went to theater school, NYU. I mean, once he decided that this was what he wanted to do for a living, he's a very serious and dedicated young actor, and really has all the tools in his toolbox to continue to progress and have a career that's more than just a commercial success, and he's the real deal.
I remember certainly bonding with him over just ambition and the idea of ambition. That's certainly, if there's one thing that defines this character in the movie, Andrew, it's ambition, it's drive. And Miles actually, I think he's spoken about this some speak about this in a Q&A or something, but also the idea of kind of how monomaniacal this character is, and in a way how that sort of helps you as an actor. Every scene, the motivation for every scene for this guy is pretty much the same. It's, I want to drum. I want to be a great drummer. And I don't know, I guess I find those sort of characters really, really fascinating. And it doesn't mean that they're one note. You can find a lot of shading, and someone like Miles is able to find a ton of shading, and even characters that might in other people's hands be one note. But at the end of the day, this right here is Andrew. Like, this is, if there's one thing that defines Andrew, it's the kid who sits at his drum set and drums past the point where his hand is bleeding. And to be honest, that's what I did. I mean, I sort of locked myself in a practice room for hours and hours and hours and drummed way past bleeding hands. We also made a point, in case you missed it, of cutting straight from the blood gushing from Miles's hand to Melissa looking like she's about to vomit in her napkin. It's a little inner joke my editor
nice.
and I.
Nice. I like that.
No one seems to pick up on, but that's okay.
Melissa, I mean, she's so wonderful in this movie, and I don't get out much or watch much of anything outside of baseball on TV, so I didn't know who she was. I hadn't seen Glee, and she's so well. First of all, she's such a stunningly beautiful woman, but this sort of girl next door character that she plays in this movie is just really so sweet, so endearing, and you really grow to love this character so much, which makes the later scene that much more devastating.
Yeah, I mean, in a way, that later scene is what we started with. That was the breakup scene is what we auditioned people on, and it was actually the first scene we shot with Melissa was the breakup scene. So that was kind of, you had to work backwards from that, and it had to sort of work in order to make that scene sort of hit home. And we play that scene mostly on Melissa's face.
If you had a choice, I mean, that face or that face, what are you going to choose?
I mean,
right?
I mean, the decision is made up for you, but the she's the collateral damage in a way. But it was also important that collateral damage actually be human, that you actually humanize them, and that you sort of see what makes them tick. And
well, this plants the seeds for that. Yeah, sowing, planting, same thing, right? This because we see that beat there where Andrew is a little bit of a dick to her because he has this inner drive and this ambition, and she's just like a 20-year-old college kid who's just like a normal 20-year-old college kid, doesn't know what she wants to do. She's just she's vulnerable and sweet, and now he steps back from that, and they sort of rebond. But that's to me a very early hint of
what's
to come.
To come.
What he's to become. And I love that. I mean, this was shot in L.A. again. I mean, there's such a New York feel. This shot. I mean, it looks like dozens of pizza joints that I've been to in New York.
Yeah. I mean, Sharon. It's really all color palette. So Sharon and I knew we wanted this scene to be green, and the interior studio band stuff to be, red, orange, and then daylight outdoor stuff was blue, and you got to work with the LA sun because the LA sun is not blue. The LA sun is hard and hard hitting. But it's just figuring out. I think also we were shooting digitally. We were shooting on the Alexa. I tend to kind of not like digital as much as film. Where I like digital is.
I think you're not alone in that, and it's unfortunately. I think the next 50 films you make, how many times do you think you're going to work on film?
I'm going to do it as much as I possibly can, but
Yeah,
no,
well, good for you, man.
I don't have any illusions. I think where digital works, and I think digital is getting better and better. Right now, I think where digital works best is in controlled color palettes, and so Sharon and I definitely tried to sort of stick to that and hew to that.
That was a lovely little beat right there, by the way, where one of the guys from the competitive bands kind of hip checks one of our guys as he's walking by. I mean,
they're all such assholes.
That establishes the level of sort of helps show the stakes.
I remember these competitions that I would go to, and they were all. It was fun recreating it.
This is my one nice moment in the entire movie.
You mean where you get her name
listen.
wrong? You call her Ava and then Amy. Have you noticed that?
In the final cut?
Oh yeah, it's right
Who
here.
the hell edited this movie? What the?
Well, for you viewers,
my
who
heart's
missed
in the
it,
right place, at least for 8 seconds.
8
there.
seconds, and then we get.
All right, cocksuckers.
Oh, lovely, lovely. It is funny how that moment always gets a laugh. You going back to being you.
Yeah.
It's in your nature.
And this was this at the Palace, the Orpheum?
No, now
the Los Angeles.
We're in a high school. What was the name of the high school? It was.
Oh, that's right.
This was our last. This was either our last day of shooting or our second last day of shooting. We finished our last week with first 3 days were the Orpheum Theater where we did all the Carnegie Hall stuff, and then the last 2 days were at this high school where we did Dunellen, Overbrook, all the kind of competition stuff. And we were just, I remember at this point, we were just banning through stuff. I mean, this was just kind of, we set up 2 cameras, did one on you, one on the band, and I think that was about it. I think that was the extent of coverage on this scene.
Stop being so polite. Get the fuck out of my sight before I demolish you.
That's Michael Cohen, who plays the stagehand.
I can still fucking see you, Mini-Me!
A.K.A. Mini-Me. Fresh from the pen of Damien Chazelle. The vast majority of the streaming expletives are directly off the page. Again, we did have...
trying to absolve yourself of responsibility, huh?
No, Damien gave us some freedom.
I just said what he wrote.
An insult, or two that I threw in on my own, but he has a lovely twisted mind full of nasty insults.
Yeah, I remember Reitman, one of the first times I met him, sort of going, this is so weird because you seem like a nice guy in person, but you're really an asshole. You're sort of flipping through the pages. And this piece that they're playing, I'll talk a little bit about the music quickly. This piece is composed and arranged by Tim Simonek, who's a great composer. He's done a lot of arrangements for Michael Giacchino and a lot of other film composers, and sort of relished the opportunity to just do original big band pieces. And so he did a couple of the pieces that we see them sort of playing in competitions, other than Whiplash and Caravan, which were licensed. And then Justin Hurwitz, who's a composer I've known since college, who I kind of do everything with, did everything else. So other than Whiplash and Caravan, pretty much every single piece of music you hear in this movie, even if it's kind of on a radio or something, is original. And was either written by Tim or by Justin, and all the underscore was by Justin. But it was all about kind of fitting into that soundscape of later big band jazz, sort of 60s, 70s big band jazz, which is, I mean, to me, it's like the closest jazz gets to like punk rock. It's just like really edgy, aggressive, energetic, angry at times. It's not the jazz that you casually sip martinis to, and that was, we kept talking about, we do not want this jazz to be the kind of jazz that you hear on a talk show or something. This is not that kind of jazz.
Well, and it's all so well integrated. The stuff Justin wrote, the stuff Tim wrote, and the Duke Ellington and the Hank Levy. Really, so there's so much a uniformity of style here, and this is Nate's chance to go off.
Oh yeah. There's also a moment here where wait for it. Okay, I don't know if you just heard that. Someone's screaming, Tanner, you think it's JK. It's actually me. It's my cameo. Isn't that amazing that
You little bitch.
My voice is in the movie as you?
Oh, it's your Alfred Hitchcock moment. Your Mel Brooks moment.
Yeah, but it's vocal. I do my own. I'm doing my little.
Yeah, okay.
This scene was probably the easiest in the entire movie to cut. there's some scenes that look kind of easy on screen that were just a bitch to cut, and then there's some that look hard that were easy to cut. But this, again, I think a lot of the material, again, this is still part of those last 2 days, and a lot of this stuff we just weren't doing a lot of takes of. We didn't have time, and also we had kind of developed as a crew, we developed a kind of groove. So, and you guys
and as a cast too,
developed a groove, yeah. And so it's just, we just set up the cameras. Again, this is basically living in two angles.
Right, Nate and Miles were so present in this scene. I love that shot of my giant, ugly, bulbous head between the two of them.
Between the two. what Tom and I would joke, the editor and I would joke that it's the two brothers going to the dad, and kind of it's almost biblical in a sense.
Yeah.
He did it. No,
Cain
he
and
did
Abel.
it.
Yeah.
He started it. And then you've got the dad who's just having none of it. But also just you can sense Nate in kind of the corner of the frame just being so angry when Miles kind of takes the reins of the scene and says, "I'll play it," because Nate knows what's coming.
And that's another line that sometimes gets swallowed up by laughter, is the Sanjay Gupta line. That is another favorite of mine.
Yeah, Sanjay Gupta. I remember this was, we talked a lot about how to stage the different musical performance scenes, and everything, similarly to how we worked the Nicole storyline back from the breakup, we worked all the musical performances in this movie back from the idea of how we were going to shoot the ending.
The shot we just left, I don't know if we go back to it or not, but it's so beautiful because you have, the bass player and the trumpet player who are real musicians. You have, look at that. And Nate's face is just like behind the cymbal, which is so perfect for what's happening to him right now. He doesn't exist.
Oh, the poor guy. He's slowly, and actually the rest of his trajectory in this movie is him to just be slowly sucked into the background.
Yeah.
But the idea, here was just to shoot this as simply as possible. There's little flourishes like this. This felt very kind of, Hitchcock, The Man Who Knew Too Much. The sort of, his remake of The Man Who Knew Too Much. But other than that, very simple sort of coverage. And again, we didn't want to give away too many bells and whistles before the Carnegie Hall blowout. And there's other things that we do in other musical sequences. The big sort of 3-person drum off we knew would be handheld and kind of run and gun and done in that style. So we tried to kind of make sure that the different pieces weren't jumping on each other's toes, and that we were keeping the grammar of this movie as something that's constantly developing and not repeating itself.
And right there at the end of that scene was a brief glimpse. There was a little speech that we shot of me, and it was a glimpse, and there were several throughout the movies, a glimpse of Fletcher's, kinder, gentler side, and seeing him sort of bonded with his boys and being, actually very kind and generous and even emotional. That at the end of the day, Damien thought, no, we have to be very, very sparing with when we allow the audience to see a side of this character that is human and humane, and it was, of course, the first thing you see as an actor when you're watching a movie is what got cut. But
I was very worried when you saw this movie for the first time. You came into the cutting room when we were close to Pixlock, not quite Pixlock,
right?
And Tom and I had a moment of looking at each other going, well, it was nice knowing you. JK's coming in.
We did not do a Life Imitates Art explosion there. No, I think at the end of the day, obviously the movie soars. It starts and it goes and it ends with that climax. And I think you trimmed all the fat the right way. I love this moment
Nicole
here.
pasted over Buddy Rich.
Yeah, it's like
sort of what his life is becoming. And
right.
We used to continue that scene and see him actually, ignore the text and go back to listening to Buddy Rich. And, in a way that was kind of like a hat on a hat. We sort of get the point. I think, again, Miles's face sort of tells you everything you need to know. This scene also used to be longer. A lot of these sort of quieter moments with Miles and other people used to be slightly longer and slightly more kind of spelled out. But we were able to let them live on his face or Paul's face. There's another great look he gives right there. That look at Paul is so not full of admiration.
Yeah.
This was the very first scene we shot. And I remember this was the AD's idea. Nick Harvard was our AD on this movie. He's probably, if I can thank one person for actually enabling this movie to get shot in 19 days, it's him.
Did you hire him just because of his last name?
Well, that and he's French.
Being the same as the alma mater? Okay.
Yeah, it was
the
perfect,
nationalism
perfect storm.
and alma mater.
Yes. And it was his idea to to actually begin with a scene you would normally never begin a shoot with. You know, these kind of 6-person dinner table scenes are notoriously difficult to cover, difficult to shoot. Time sucks. This was also a scene that even in the script, people were sort of suggesting should be cut because it was going to take us too much time.
Right, and it's such a disparate. I mean, you have 6 different actors in this, you know, coming together for the first time.
We could have really saved ourselves a lot of trouble by not doing the scene, let alone doing it first. But his thinking, which I think was kind of brilliant, was that first of all, we don't have a lot of time to shoot this movie in general. The worst thing you could do for the pace of this shoot would be to begin it with something that was just kind of business, that we should begin with something that was really juicy, really meaty, let the actors and the crew know that we were not gonna, like Sidney Lumet has this great story of sort of similarly shooting movies this way, where he would begin his shoots with setting up a shot that seems kind of like, you know, a sort of bit of business shot, a simple shot. He'd say, you know, go. They would shoot it. Then he'd say, good, print it, moving on to the next. And suddenly that tells the crew, I might use the first take. So, and it sets the entire tone. Suddenly people are on their toes.
Well, at least for a couple of movies until that story gets out.
Until the story
and
gets
now
out.
you've blown it for future crews.
Yeah, well, this is where other directors get to steal the same story. But this, in a way, did that for this shoot. It told everyone that we were not gonna, you know, we were gonna begin in with the meaty stuff. And it gave Miles something to really dig into as his character right off the bat.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was great fun shooting. This is Chris Mulkey here at the head of the table.
Great cast. I mean, from all the way up and down, the casting in this film between Damien and the casting people was really impeccable. I mean, everybody in that studio band, in the pro band, you know, these you know, people who worked 4 hours, you know, was their time on the movie.
Yeah, Terry Taylor was our casting director. Also she also did the casting on the short. That's literally, I mean, I have to say, one of my favorite processes. One of my favorite processes on making a movie in general is just putting the cast together. And when you start to see, you know, you kind of have your chart on the wall of the various headshots of people as they start to be cast in roles, and it starts off almost bare. You know, start off with just you and Miles. Right. And then you slowly fill it in, Nicole and, you know, Melissa and Paul Reiser, and slowly starts filling in. And by the end, you have an entire wall full of images, and you get to actually look at it and you see your cast. You see it in the flesh, and it's so exciting. It really is one of those moments where the movie starts to feel real, starts to feel human, and not just like kind of cartoon figures on storyboards or words on a page.
Well, and you start, you know, I mean, you're in the office, and you feel like you're bonding with these guys already, you know, and then we all get to the set, and you know, I'm the worst in the world at learning people's names, and I mean, I go to a family reunion, I don't know everybody's name.
You're pretty good at it, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I was just one of the musicians.
You only called me Miles like 50 times.
1,000 times, because you two are interchangeable to me. All the guys in studio band, especially because I spent more time with them than with the pro band. You know, I mean, we had a great time hanging out, and I probably never learned any of their damn names, except Eugene, because I ended up asking him for the folder in that previous scene. Yep. But so many great shots of these guys who were again, some of whom had a little acting background. They were all musicians, and they were all just really focused and dedicated to making this thing work. And they were really a pleasure to work with. And yeah, so one of those guys was at a screening we attended last night, and it was, you know, it was like...
Oh, he was?
Yeah, it was like seeing a long-lost pal, you know?
That's so cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And, of course, do I remember his name? No, because that's just, I'm an asshole.
Well, doesn't take much for you to play one, then.
No, it was not a stretch at all, dude.
Yeah, but it is true that, you know, all the sort of rehearsal scenes, I mean, they live or die based on those other faces in the frame. I mean, I knew this movie was going to be a movie of faces, and especially for an audience who maybe, you know, isn't that familiar with the music in the movie or the style of music or what actually the stakes are in a school like this. It's the faces of those kids that tell you everything. They somehow manage to, without any words, and again, most of them without any acting experience at all, tell you their ambitions, tell you how important this is to them, tell you how scared they are of you, how driven they are. It was all their real lives, and it was so fun just getting to, especially as a former musician myself, getting to share stories with them on set. You know, we'd like do a take, and a guy would come up to me and go, "Oh, I remember when my, you know, I had a conductor who did exactly that to me, or like they'd come and go, oh no, my conductor was much worse. He actually he didn't throw a stand at me. He threw a blackboard at me. Tuba. Yeah, it was just like always one story after another, and this is the office that you talked about. That we used to have a whole other scene in this office earlier on in the movie that we spent almost a whole day shooting. Somehow in our 19-day shoot, we somehow devoted an entire day.
Yes, he said 19 days.
But again, I guess it's. I think all this stuff was good for you guys to sort of, even if it doesn't wind up on screen, it winds up in the characters.
No, and I love how raw all this shooting was. Him going into the office and then pulling him out like this. It's
certainly reflecting his
emotional.
Yeah, and then we go straight to very perfectly composed, perfectly elegant shooting for this scene, which to my mind is Miles delivering a speech that he's delivered to a wall probably, and he might as well be delivering it to a wall right now as well. I think,
in terms of how much he
cares,
how much humanity he has.
You can even see it in his eyes. His eyes are starting to go dead, and her eyes are the exact opposite.
Right.
And this is where I think it's really a testament to Melissa as an actress that we were able to just have the scene live on her, and that you just see all these emotions that are going on in her eyes, and they're so full of emotion, and yet she's not kind of bursting into tears.
And this is one of those
really subtle.
This is one of those things where, and I just discovered this a couple nights ago, and I only met Melissa actually recently because we have no scenes in the movie. But she didn't know that this scene was going to live so much on her face, on her listening. I mean, Miles is talking, and Damien has the camera on her because that's what matters. What matters is the effect his words are having on her, and she, fortunately, like Miles and like everybody, at least in my experience on this movie, is one of those actors that never takes a second off. I mean, a lot of times, maybe more so in television than film, when it's not your coverage, you work with a lot of actors that are just kind of taking a break. And, or when it's not, when you're not the one talking, when you're the one listening and you figure, whatever, they're going to be on the other guy here anyway. But she was so present in the moment and really, and just working, just giving and working and being a generous actor. And that's not something you always find.
Yeah, I think that's it sort of hits the nail on the head in the sense that scene could have just been about Miles, but you put the right actor in the role of Nicole, and it becomes about a lot more. And
then you see half a second there of him like, well, shit, I was an asshole there, and then boom,
and then he goes
right back to work.
Right back to work.
This is what it's about. And then,
I mean,
boom!
You are seeing someone who at this point is deeply, deeply selfish, and so it's behavior that you're, sort of repelled by, and yet
selfish but self-loathing at the same time.
Exactly, and what I love about how Miles plays this next shot right here, where he's, I certainly, when I'd get really pissed at my own lack of abilities playing drums, I'd curse and scream and yell. But coming after what he's just done to Nicole as well, there's a real self-hatred here that I think comes through.
And I love having seen it now 3 times. When he's screaming "fuck you" there, it struck me 2 different ways. He's screaming "fuck you" at himself, self-loathing, but then he's screaming "fuck you" at Fletcher, like, I can do this, I can do this.
Yep. I think he's also screaming "fuck you" at the world in a sense of just the world for judging
I think,
him.
frankly, he's saying "fuck you" at Damien.
Miles,
kind of a long day.
At that point in the shoot, is probably exactly right.
Yeah.
There's definitely a big "fuck you" moment coming up, which I guess we'll talk about later when we get into the drummer the three-person drum off.
This is the one scene where that Damien kept in the movie,
Yes.
where we actually briefly see a human being inhabiting the skin of Mr. Fletcher. But again, I love that how much he lingered on Miles in that shot there, who's whatever, he's a fucking movie star, and I'm just a dried up old character actor, so that's part of the reason to live there. But all these guys, man, I mean, look at these shots of these guys. Those guys are musicians,
out
man.
of pity. No, it's so true. No, exactly. Those faces are. I mean, we had so many faces like that, and they were beautifully shot. In Sharon shot them in these wider angles. So when you have wide lens close-ups of faces, to me, it just reminds me of like. It feels like, kind of monumental. It feels like, like if you look at old like Soviet movies, Eisenstein movies, they're all composed of these close-ups and wide lenses of faces, and makes people feel larger than life. And
there's an example right there.
Cursing himself.
and there's Miles, and this was actually kind of very, sort of taken from personal experience in the sense that I remember this conductor that I had scaring me, but every once in a while, like I remember once he gave a speech about a piece of music. It was actually not even jazz, it was a piece of classical music. He'd started in classical, and he got so emotional. And I remember once he also talked about someone whom he had lost, and again also got very emotional. And to be these sort of quiet emotional moments where suddenly you'd see this human being and you'd feel for them, but this would be a person that you were terrified of the second before and would become terrified of a second later. But seeing that kind of dichotomy, I remember just as a young musician being so fascinating and weird and both unsettling and moving.
Yeah, and both aspects of it can be sort of unsettling, And people, one of the questions people ask actors is, how do you, where does the emotion come from? How do you cry? How do you scream? How do you laugh? And again, I always go back to if the writing is really good on the page, acting almost any kind of emotion is easy for me because it's just channeling into what a good writer wrote. Playing bad writing is what's really, really, really hard. And now here we're seeing this is just a shot of guys getting their music out of their folders, but you see on their faces what they've just experienced. A moment that maybe the one moment they will ever experience like that with this character.
That shot we just saw of Miles is maybe my favorite Miles moment in the movie, in the sense that it tells you where this character is. J.K. has just given this long, heartfelt speech about a student dying, and as soon as he says, "Oh, Connolly, not quite right," he doesn't even say Miles.
He's all
to
about
take the part.
my
He says,
turn.
as soon as he says Connolly, not quite right, you see this smile on Miles's face. It's not overdone, but it's just enough. And I remember when Tom and I were editing it, when we found that moment, we kind of hinged this part of the scene on that. We kind of knew that's what this scene is about.
Motherfucker!
And what's interesting also about this now is you see these musicians looking scared. The one person who, to my mind at least, is not scared and does not look scared at all right now is Miles. This is the total, it's a 180 in a sense from the initial studio band rehearsal scene where Miles gets the chair thrown at him and slapped and everything, where there is real kind of fear and agony on his face. At this point, I see more anger on his face and more drive on his face than fear. And so you see JK, at this point we've actually developed Miles into like a worthy adversary to you. Because you see that's not fear.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys. Hate to put you through this.
But you look at the other musicians.
I got to get in my dig about drummers here, I think.
Oh, yeah, which you added, of course. I would never write that. That's Adrian Baker right there, who just gives a perfect look of, oh, my God, I'm so glad I'm not them.
Seriously, take 10, 20, a fucking hour. You hear me, cocksuckers?
And we have this very sort of subtle drone kind of building up that Justin composed for this scene. And I remember scoring this scene was tricky because, it starts off as not audible at all, and you kind of realize it's sort of building as it builds, and it builds into this sort of piano chord that's repeated over and over as Andrew's drumming, which we basically ripped from Don Giovanni, of all things.
Don Giovanni, a little Mozart.
Also dealing with.
Well, there's a little full circle. I
forces,
did Leporello's catalog aria on my senior recital.
Oh, yeah?
From Don Giovanni.
That's actually, I knew that. And that's what it was a little bit of. But like finding the right kind of.
Oh, and here's my my homophobic rant. I finally get to go into my. I'm gonna, play a prissy homo on this because I got to insult pretty much everything. I got to be gender biased, anti-Semitic, racist, homophobic,
anti-Irish.
Anti-everything that wasn't Terrence Fletcher.
Yeah. No, he's a man full of hatred. But it's all about dehumanizing people, and to me, that's a great image.
Great shot, Nate.
Nate just barely even drumming anymore. It's just becoming machine-like.
What the fuck are you looking for? There's no pot of gold down there.
Pot of gold. That was that's the seat height. Was you?
Fucking problem the whole time. The seat height. So now you have it, right? Go.
You're not supposed to laugh at your own joke, J.K. God.
Come on, it's just you and me hanging out.
I apologize. So we've got the score slowly building up here, and we've got Miles sort of going, off and on and off and on. But again, I think that resolve is just building itself. All that's really standing in his way right now is physical limitations, and he's finally going to break through those here. This is sort of the final forging, I guess, at which point I think by the end of this scene he is totally on the dark side. And to kind of achieve that, I mean, there's just these incredible faces that Miles makes that are just not really acted. It's really just him drumming that fast.
You know what I love too? He's in the black T-shirt in this scene, or the dark. It was a dark gray.
We talked about it's Star Wars. Is what we ripped off.
There you go,
I remember when I was young watching Star Wars. Probably the first kind of thing of symbolism I ever noticed in movies was that Luke Skywalker starts off wearing white, and then starts wearing gray and darker shades in Empire Strikes Back, and then by the end he is wearing black, and he becomes Darth Vader. So this was me doing a lower budget version of Star Wars, and you're Darth Vader. But
I thought it was Yoda.
Well, that too. You look quite a bit like Yoda.
I met Yoda. Did you meet Yoda?
Yeah, I met Yoda at Tirana.
Awesome.
The guy who's Yoda was sort of modeled after.
Right.
But yeah, so here you're hearing those Don Giovanni chords going, and it's becoming this whole sort of pitch. Scoring this, I remember, like, at first the score was too loud, then there wasn't enough. We had to find that sort of balance. You're finding a balance that's sort of subliminal underneath the wall of sound, but also just shooting it. We shot take after take after take of this in long, continuous takes, and we would barely cut. We would go, I'd yell reset, we'd go again, I'd yell reset. I mean, Miles is legitimately exhausted at this point, and so are the other drummers, and so when I was referring to a fuck you, I think they all kind of hated me at the end of this. In fact, this was probably the scene where you told Miles, dude, you should hold on a little bit. We're going to do a lot of takes of this.
Yeah. Conserve. It's a marathon.
Yeah, this was a marathon scene.
A 19-day marathon. Yeah, this was pretty late at night, this shot, as I recall.
Yep. I think
and this
again,
helps
like, act the fatigue.
Yeah. This is straight out.
I love how you're still like have this fashion sense though. They all come out like zombies. You're doing your scarf.
Well, it's cold, man. We were. But I love this shot. This is like, this is straight out of whatever. I mean, he looks like he's just gone 15 rounds.
It's it makes me happy that Miles is actually playing a boxer in his next movie, because certainly he looks like a boxer. His nose, the scars on his face, it's just, again, there's something so brutally physical about his face, and this is not the same kid
brutal.
that we began the movie with.
Face. Let's
brutal,
admit it.
Yeah. Just brutal to look at.
It is terrible.
Brutal to remember. So, I mean,
here's a really one of my favorite shots, too, coming up here. Wait a minute, am I wrong?
You must be completely wrong. Which one are you talking about?
Yeah, that.
Oh.
That. It's like, what the fuck is going on back there? He's got his headset in and he's in the zone, he doesn't.
I remember getting dirty looks when I was sort of on buses trying to learn how to play stuff. The whole model for this, basically from the bus all the way to the end of this whole sequence, after he tackles you, was it was like a drug sequence to Tom and I. Cutting it was just, it's, in terms of scoring it as well, it's just, let's build up the pitch inside this guy's head so that it just becomes unbearable, and then let's keep going once it's already unbearable.
Uh-huh.
Those sort of scenes where you're like, okay, it can't possibly get worse. Oh no, it can't get worse. Oh, okay, now it's over. Now the movie's probably over. Oh no, the scene's still going. And there's, so we ripped off certainly the famous, stirring the sauce, getting the Coke.
I'm sorry to interrupt there, but that shot there
Goodfellas.
of the stick bag on the chair gets an audible gasp.
Does it?
Oftentimes.
I've been at one screening, where it did.
Yeah.
That's always nice.
Yeah.
You always hope that you want to have stuff be as quick as possible for people, so that you don't feel like you don't want to sell it too hard, and yet you want it to be, you want it to be there enough that people notice. So there's always a little bit of a worry in my mind that the stick bag is almost not long enough.
That was some serious acceleration on that speedometer there. I mean, that's
if you actually look at
cheesy rental cars.
If you actually go up to see how fast it goes, it's actually impossible. But again, this is where I wanted the movie to sort of tip into fever dream and sort of become that kind of coke addict sort of on a bender kind of thing. In many ways, I think this is a drug movie. It's just the drug is drums.
Yeah.
and this was the last scene we shot. This was our martini scene of the whole shoot.
Yeah. And
6 a.m.
And it was Miles, at his height of, like actually going toe to toe with Fletcher for the first time.
Yep. We shot this entire scene, I think, in half an hour. I remember it was
quick.
We had to get out at 6 a.m. and it was, I think, 5:30 or 5:40 when we started shooting, and we just took the camera, got the 2 angles. It was handheld, so it sort of sped us up a bit. We had to get a few of these angles. We did a couple takes, and that was it. And that was a wrap on our shooting. Man, that felt so good to be done with shooting. Jeez.
It felt so good to just scream at Miles.
This felt like a good scene to end on, in a way. It just kind of, you guys get to just yell at each other full volume for once. It's actually the one scene where you two are yelling at each other.
Yeah.
But just, again, the dead eyes on Miles and the sort of this resolve in him is just, in a sense, Fletcher is this sort of immovable object. There's not that much of an arc for Fletcher. We're learning different shades. He's like an onion that's unpeeling, but he himself as a character is sort of in one spot. And Miles kind of goes from A to Z.
Yeah, and then if anything, the arc for Fletcher all takes place in the last 10 minutes.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
How did it feel to only have to act in the last 10 minutes of the movie?
With no words.
Here, this is a brilliant little thing that Justin, as composer, did too. Right before the truck comes, he introduces the music from The Date with Nicole, which you probably, maybe no one recognizes, but you sort of subliminally puts in the opposite emotion when things were nice.
Wow, cool.
But he turns it into this hellish section.
Well, in that shot, for a movie that's obviously not like an action movie, but that shot, which was, maybe the only sort of stunt sequence in the film, and I actually have no idea how you shot the crash itself, but
I will tell you, JK.
Please do. How did you shoot this?
How did we shoot it? It was our second day of shooting. I remember that.
I actually dropped by this day just to.
Right when we were doing this shot is when you dropped by,
out of the car.
because you saw Miles all bloodied up.
Are
you okay?
Essentially, it's 3 shots stitched together, but the whole idea was to make it feel like one shot. So you're seeing Miles actually drive in his car, and then we whip pan down to his phone as he puts it down. There's a hidden cut in there. As we whip pan back up, we are against green screen, and the truck you're seeing come in a green screen. And then Miles had to kind of, doing the green screen part was, of course, a little funny. It was just sort of yelling, "Truck!" And Miles just sort of would flame back. And as soon as he flames back towards the camera, there's another hidden cut there, thanks to the black of his back. And there we cut to an actual stunt double. This guy named Brady, who was put in a car that was tilted at sort of 90 degrees and then dropped. And so the last part of that is all real, but it's not Miles. So, but it was all about hidden cuts and also doing it quick enough and fast enough, and also making sure that the audience is the fun of it is that the audience is thinking, oh my God, he's late, he's going to be late, how's he going to make it? The truck coming at you is probably not the first thing that's on your mind when you're watching it, so you don't have time to actually really slowly observe the truck and see whether you think it's realistic or not.
And here, speaking of realistic, we kept going back and forth on how bloodied up can Miles be? And I mean, at the end of the day, it was, obviously, if I'm looking at him, I'm like, wow, this is messed up. But, the way Damien puts it together, it's the moment. And if I want to win this competition, and I always want to win these competitions, I have no choice but to give a downbeat and see what happens.
It is funny that sort of the moment on your face before you actually kind of give the band the cue. It shows just how fucked up Fletcher really is, because a lot of people in the audience. There's not many people in the audience we'll see later. It's as most of these competitions are, the audience is actually basically empty, and they're sort of somewhat far away. So, but you can get a full kind of close look at what Miles looks like, and you can tell he's been through something. And yet that doesn't stop you. You asshole. And
here comes Miles' favorite moment in the film is coming up here, the moment where he broke 2 of my ribs.
Yes.
Tackling me after I got to slap him around.
He likes to brag about that.
No, I know.
In interviews and everything.
It's a beauty. He's such a little brat.
It was fun also using Caravan at this point.
There you see how sparse the audience is there. It's just a
very,
few judges.
Very few people.
Maybe one kid's mom and dad who happened to live in Dunellen.
Oh, those poor parents.
we've gone to adjudications like this for our kids' middle school and high school music groups, and we're always the only parents there. But it's like that's a great place to get to hear your kids play.
It's true, and it's funny how few parents actually go. I mean, certainly I remember the competitions I would go to were not very heavily attended.
Here we go. He's off.
Miles is so happy.
No!
You could just see the glee on Miles' face. Finally. And again, appropriately enough, this was either the last day of shooting or the second to last day of shooting. It's when we were doing all this competition stuff. So we got to build up to this moment.
A little blood on my coat there. Not my own.
Piece of shit! Fuck you!
Again, a lot of boxing analogies. I mean, that was all very, it's very kind of very intentional.
And then I love when we cut to this. And I mean, where the hell are we?
Yeah, there used to be stuff in the script that kind of segued into this a little more.
I love the abruptness of it.
And it just works much better. And even in the cut-in, we kind of played with the rhythms a bit. But I like his first line is, "How long have you been talking to her?" It's almost like it's his dad's new girlfriend or something. He's like, "How?"
Right.
And then we find out no, it's not exactly the case. And this actress, April Grace, I saw in Magnolia, where she plays the interviewer who gets under Tom Cruise's skin, and it's this incredible sort of extended sequence between them. So in a weird way, this character was sort of somewhat molded after that interviewer. There's a way that she has of being extremely gentle and kind and almost maternal to Miles, and yet she's saying things that in a way are just as painful to him as anything Fletcher says.
That's a great shot of Captain Fabulous there.
Fantastic. It's Mr.
Whatever.
Fantastic.
It's interesting. That's a cool shot too. Who's the kid?
The kid not playing the paradiddle.
Yeah, not playing a paradiddle.
And we actually shot that. Paul Reiser shot that footage on our first day of shooting. As soon as we were done with the dinner table scene, we gave Paul Reiser a little video camera, and had Sam get his drum kit out, and Paul Reiser started shooting it. And Paul Reiser was so sweet. You hear the stuff off screen. He's going, yeah, he's just having such a blast. And I remember
cool.
certainly I remember my dad, buying me my first drum kit and everything. There's something. It's all the great memories you have as a drummer, and I remember,
well, just as a kid too.
Yeah, as a kid, and also as something that then becomes such a source of dread for you. I remember when I was in the thick of competitions and everything, just thinking back to my early days as a drummer and thinking, man, it was so innocent.
It used to be fun, yeah.
It used to be fun.
I love the way you cut back and forth here too, because it feels like it's it's a linear story, and then we the first time we cut away to Miles, I think it's like this scene is over,
right?
And then we come back to it and let it develop and let the whole thing sink in like it's sinking into him right now, and then making the decision.
And Miles, I remember, talked to me about when we were doing this scene. His take on this is just he's coming into this room after going through this experience, and it's like going into the room and realizing, geez, how crazy was I? And yet he's sad to not be that crazy anymore. That it's like the
That's
scene
a
of someone
great shot
getting
right
better.
there, taking the Buddy Rich photo.
Yeah, there's something so sad about it, throwing the stuff in the trash, and suddenly the practice room that used to be his life is now completely empty and looks like the mental asylum cell that it probably always was.
Where was this? Where did you shoot this?
This was in the basement of the Palace Theater, I believe.
Hmm.
Yeah, everything was at the Palace. And that little piano tune you're hearing was the theme that Justin came up with for the score, which is actually the same melody you hear in the overture, that big band piece that you hear in the overture in the end credits. Same melody that UJK play at the piano. It's a melody that you hear reprised over and over again. Pretty much everything in the score is a riff on that melody.
When I first saw it, I thought it was like a cymbal bag over his shoulder, and I thought, wait, well, what the? And then I realized
I thought he was done.
It's laundry,
passing
just
by
normal,
our superimposed
mundane, right?
That JVC Jazz Festival. That's just a comp that we put in. They're sitting here listening to. They were originally watching Charade, which we couldn't get the rights to, so they're watching Easter Parade with Fred Astaire.
I can tell that they're acting like they're watching charade, though.
Yes, it was actually a huge problem that their facial expressions did not match at all. It's probably the least happy movie watching thing I've ever seen in my life.
This is a beautiful little, 6-second scene there, too. Such a nice father-son dynamic,
It's again where you rely on good actors to be able to say a lot with a little. Also, just the sadness of this apartment. I mean, we used to have more establishing stuff with this apartment. That this was an apartment that Miles is no longer living. He's been kicked out of Schaefer, so he's not living on campus. He's not living back at home with his dad. His dad helped sort of find him a little kind of one bedroom in the city. But it's completely bare. It's white walls. It's just again going back to the drug metaphor. This is very much about sort of. It's the addict the former addict, or you're always an addict, but the recovering addict trying to. Oh my God!
Sorry,
how did we get that?
Yeah,
was that yellow cab hired?
We had a PA standing on the corner going,
waiting for yellow
that
cab.
was shot in L.A. and that was there are two things that sell that scene for New York City. One is Damien starting out on the kid with the pickle barrels, playing. And the second one is we actually got a yellow cab going.
Never even noticed that yellow cab. That's amazing.
Who directed this movie, man?
Oh, not me, Reitman.
Good Lord. Oh yeah, he's good.
Yeah. No.
Speaking of good, man, these three guys. I mean, this was such a pleasure because I don't really. I mean, I'm really playing the piano here, but I don't. I'm not a piano player. I had to practice this very simple, very beautiful Justin Hurwitz jazz ballad, but I had to practice it a lot. And,
you did a great job.
And there were brief moments where I actually settled into the pocket with Fufu and these guys here. And
Fufu the drummer.
These guys,
such a character. He's great.
Such a pleasure.
These guys are. I mean, again, they are as authentic as you get.
And
these guys have played with everyone.
The guy in the foreground, the first time we see Miles walk in there was Cal.
Yep.
Yeah, who ends up
another great
playing in the pro band later. He'll be our first saxophone.
Another funny thing about this jazz club is that we are actually outside. This is the kind of outer arcade of the Palace Theater. And Melanie Jones, our production designer, turned it into a jazz club.
You can see how much he loves me there. It's just pure love.
Love, you think so?
Come on, and I think it's coming from Miles to J.K. really as much as from Andrew.
Oh,
Fletcher.
it's definitely actor to actor, I think.
Or maybe he was looking in a mirror for that shot. I don't know.
I remember I wrote this as basically saying that he sees Fletcher playing handling the piano like a newborn baby, with just such just that there's such a just this delicate touch that you have with the keys that is so opposite to how you are with your players normally.
Yeah, the whole scene is such a and even the astute observer will see that this is the only scene in the movie where I'm actually wearing something different, and just look a little more relaxed and human.
A little more like a normal guy.
I don't know if you heard, I'm not at Schaefer anymore.
And this, as usual with, this is a really long scene where we learn a lot. And of course, it was longer on paper.
Yep.
There was a significant portion that was cut, some of which was, my own bullshit rant that I went on because again, Damien, we did what was written, and then we also, had the freedom to throw stuff in there too. So I was adding my own metaphors about, about the willingness of people to settle for mediocrity and about how important I thought it was to battle against that. And this is a philosophy, honestly, that I'm espousing here, that Fletcher is espousing here, that I completely understand and almost 100% agree with. Obviously, it's the method that is a little questionable.
Well, what's questionable about the method? I don't understand.
Well,
I thought Fletcher's the hero of the movie.
Well, see, I always did too, but then I've been talking to Miles too much. I guess, yeah, you're right.
No, don't talk to Miles. He's
exactly. Well, talking to Miles, okay, it's the listening to Miles where you get in trouble.
Just don't believe anything he says.
Thanks for the reminder.
Yeah. No, for sure. I remember Helen Estabrook was one of the producers on this. When we
she was the voice of all that is right and good on the set and
Yes.
providing wisdom and
Well,
she was the Yoda of the movie. Actually,
she
now that I
did,
think
and
it, she's young and lovely, but
she
she was
provided some Yoda-like wisdom on this scene. Because I remember she was there for every day of shooting, but there was one scene I think that she wasn't able to. I think she had to put out a fire somewhere, and she gave me one sort of word of advice in terms of Miles in this scene, and it was just one sentence. It was, finally someone gets it, and that's Miles in the scene. If you actually look at it, it's and that's what's twisted and sad about it and everything, is that he's trying to adjust to quote unquote sober living. And in that sense, J.K. is the last person that you want to kind of run into. But you were saying this. You're saying all the things that he kind of wishes that his family would say, and this is the flip side of the family dinner. This is finally the person who actually completely sees eye to eye with him and understands him and understands
and all
what
the
gets
stuff
him.
that he was trying to live up to before and gave up on. Or did he?
Well, yeah.
God, I'm a handsome man. Oh, I could look at myself all day. Helen Estabrook.
Me too, J.K. In fact, Tom and I did.
Yes, I know. Grueling.
Many days.
Helen was an assistant in my agent's office, whatever, 7 years ago or 8 years ago. It's
not even that long, probably.
Probably not.
Her rise to prominence is pretty meteoric. In fact, it's Andrew Neiman-like.
Well, maybe without the level of drive, but certainly with the level of
bloody hands.
Just the level of talent and understanding and intellect. She's all right. Enough. All right, Helen's nice. We like Helen.
Okay, Helen, you listening? You
Not
happy,
all
you
about
happy
you,
now?
Helen. That's it.
Okay.
We're done.
All right, moving on. Back to us. So
The truth is, Andrew, I never really had a Charlie Parker. But I tried.
I remember shooting this. There's something also about. I think you genuinely looking back on the scene. I think clearly there's a lot of manipulation going on here, and that's part of the fun of it. I guess is that to what extent are you actually saying your mind, and to what extent are you completely just luring the lamb back in? But I think
I don't think the two were mutually exclusive.
Well,
at all.
yeah,
That's
exactly,
the beauty of it,
exactly, and I think you do genuinely wish that you had found your Charlie Parker, and you do genuinely feel that you didn't. And maybe Sean Casey got close, maybe some other people got close, but you've never actually found your Charlie Parker, and you still hold out hope. I mean, that's the thing. I think from the very first moment that Fletcher sees Andrew playing the kit in the very first scene in the movie, he is maybe already plotting out the end of the movie in his mind, and it takes a different road than he anticipated. But I think what makes Fletcher brilliant is that, unlike anyone else in the world, he's able to see Andrew play for a couple seconds and see immediately, A, he has the potential to go the distance, and B, he has the resilience to go the distance. That he might seem like this shy, kind of wimpy kid, but deep down, he's going to take it.
I hope he has the resilience, and if he doesn't, fuck him. I'll chew him up and spit him out. And if he does not have the resilience, I'll move on. I mean, I'm again unconcerned with the human collateral damage.
Exactly. That's exactly your philosophy, is that, you know what, if it takes, if I have a room full of 10 kids, this is why you don't care about discouraging people. If I have a room full of 10 kids, I use my methods. They discourage 9 out of 10 of them. If they lead to 1 out of 10 of them becoming great, then it was totally worth it.
It's like the twisted version of Rilke, the Letters to a Young Poet. Did you ever read that?
No.
Did I read something that you haven't read? Oh, I finally found something. Rainier Maria Rilke, the great poet who, very romantic, 19th century. And there was a young, struggling young man who wrote him letters about his struggles with life and love and just his existential angst and his, wanting to express it and be a poet. And Rilke tries to discourage him and says, if there is anything else in life that you could possibly do that you think make you happy, do that. And only if there truly is not, should you be a poet.
Mm-hmm. I think Andrew would fall into that category.
What is that, JV?
No. I love this scene too because it's part of that anachronism that you were establishing throughout the movie. That this. I mean, in real life, most kids now this is a text message. this is an email or something. But the fact that he has this awkward phone call with her and the realization.
He probably wishes it were a text message.
Yeah,
right,
probably does
right
now,
about
yeah.
now. This was actually all done, raw, so to speak, live. This is Nicole actually, Melissa actually on the phone.
Which is a beautiful
when
way
we-
to shoot
when we
these
called
scenes.
her.
And it's the second time in my life. The first time actually was a movie with Brad Pitt called The Mexican.
You're such a name
that,
dropper.
yeah.
God.
And I had phone conversations with him, and the director called me at home, Gore Verbinski, and asked me if I would. They were shooting in Mexico. I was living in New York.
Yeah.
Asked me if I would get on the phone with Brad, and it was some weird time of day and everything, and I thought absolutely. So the first thing I did in that movie was actually being an offstage, phone voice for Brad for a scene where Brad's at the payphone, and we played the scene together. And then 6 weeks later or whatever it was, I was doing my end of the phone call. We're shooting in I don't know. I think we were down in Mexico still. Maybe we were back up in L.A. And sure enough, there's Brad in the next room on a phone. He didn't even have to be there that day, but he showed up to do the other half of the phone call, and it really makes a difference.
It does
and
make the
people
difference.
just so rarely take that extra step. I love that shot of him looking, and then boom, Carnegie Hall. For those of you who don't know, that's Carnegie Hall.
Yeah.
And Damien nicely framed out most of the. There was scaffolding up
Yeah.
at Carnegie Hall. I actually had told him when we finally decided we had $75 to go to New York. I told Damien, I said, I know we're doing all these Carnegie Hall exteriors, but I think there's scaffolding up at Carnegie Hall, so you can't see, that it says Carnegie Hall. And he was like, oh, shit, is it, do you know if it's still up? Because I had been in New York a month or two before. And I called a friend of mine who lives at 59th and 7th.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and he literally looked out his window and could see that the scaffolding was still up.
I remember being really worried about the scaffolding, but it's funny. I forget that there's even scaffolding on it now when I see those shots. But we almost scrapped the Carnegie Hall shot when I thought the scaffolding, when I first heard scaffolding, I literally thought it was like
all the way up.
All the way up. You guys are such overreactors.
We just didn't know what an artist you are.
This, I remember this speech, the first time you saw a cut, this speech had been cut.
And again, I'm sorry to interrupt. This is such a great example.
God,
it's like the scene living on Melissa's face, I mean, it's me going on, blah, 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 blah. But what's important, the important
Miles.
thing in that moment is the impact that it's having on Andrew and his mindset going into this next thing.
Yep.
And then my second favorite shot in the movie is we're about to go by here with, and of course, as I've said, established, I don't remember anybody's name. But it's Fletcher having his jacket put on, and that's one of our wardrobe assistants.
It, to me, is maybe the single funniest shot in the movie.
Anyway, what were you were trying to make some actual point there?
An actual point, not just.
Believe me, we got 10 minutes to talk now because we're about to have a drum solo for 10 minutes.
Oh,
so
God.
we could give our whole biographies.
Yeah, drum solos as boring as you get. No, that speech you were giving down there, I remember you recommended that we put it back in, which normally when an actor recommends you put back in an actor's speech, normally you nod and politely say yes and then do the opposite. But in that case, it's all about setting the stage for this. And
I thought it really.
Oh no, you absolutely need it. And then you lead up to this moment, which was kind of really fun to shoot. If you recall, that shot of you, we shot without cutting about 10 times, you coming up to Miles and saying different iterations.
Right,
of, I know it was
Which, by
you.
the way, I thought there were a couple that were better, frankly, so I'd like to talk to you about that.
Okay, yeah. Well, talk to Reitman.
We're very excited to be here, kicking off the JVC Festival this year.
That's such a great shot.
Poor Miles. Oh, I love that guy too. Just it's again the athlete comp. Some of this trumpeter. As soon as we hear J.K. say these are some of the best musicians in the world, you see that trumpeter kind of tilt his head back as though he's a guy about to go into the boxing ring, and Miles is looking. It's like looking at the guys who are about to pummel him to the ground. All this stuff was shot in the Orpheum Theater in downtown L.A.
Doubling for Carnegie.
And it's tough. We had extras to go into these seats for only 6 hours, so we had to shoot everything in that direction that would actually see extras in 6 hours. And of course, we didn't have enough extras to actually fill the space, so we used a lot of smoke, which is again stuff I wanted to use anyway. I just love what smoke does. It helps soften the sharp edges of digital, and then also for something like this, kind of gives it that kind of that boxing sort of, trial by fire kind of violent sort of feel.
Especially if it's subtle enough to find that level. There was a guy on, an FX guy on Terminator that had a T-shirt on the back that said, in increasingly large print, more smoke, more smoke, more smoke, more smoke. Too much smoke.
That is pretty much the arc. I remember there were some shots where producers, like some of the producers, would be behind the monitor going, "What is with all the smoke? Who allowed this?" But I also, trot out the age-old reasoning that it doesn't, that at a certain point, that kind of realism, it's more about emotional realism than physical realism, and that this is what it feels like to Andrew.
And that's the Tim Simonek tune, by the way, Upswingin', which I did. One of the things that Damien did not cut from the movie was me giving Tim a little shout out there. Unfortunately, we didn't get Justin Hurwitz's name into the movie, but frankly, Tim Simonek is a better jazz name than Justin Hurwitz.
Justin Hurwitz is in the movie. His name is Jackie Hill. Because when Andrew says this is When I Wake by Jackie Hill, 1938 at the pizza, we intentionally did that to JH. Yeah.
Nice. You also cut my friend Paul Lang's name from the movie, by the way, you bastard. He was the guy that I wrote on the record label.
Oh, believe me, I remember.
Yeah.
Believe me, I remember.
Yeah. So, Paul.
Is this really the time for this?
This is for you. We'll talk later. Yeah, and what was the name of this song? The song that ends up being the recurring, the thing that I play in the
Paul
jazz
Lang's
club.
Song. Yeah, what was it?
Paul Lang. It was you.
It was you.
I was allowed
to
to both name the song and the artist who recorded it in 1930.
And it was you is perfect, given that that's your little refrain at the end.
Yeah. Oh, there are levels, baby. I'm a serious onion. There's a lot going on there. And this is another scene that was there was an extended sequence here of Paul fighting through security to get backstage and all sorts of like realistic stuff, and then a significant amount of dialogue here.
It used to be. There's a lot of cheating going on in the cutting here because it used to be right here. Security guards come in right now. Miles looks at the security guards. That's who he was looking at there. Security guards grab him. Security guards ask Miles, "Do you know this person?" Miles says no. It was a whole 2-page long dialogue where Andrew actually, verbally denies his father, and it was just over the top. It just didn't sort of work in the context of the movie, even though everyone involved did a wonderful job.
Right, it ends up being totally enough that he just leaves him there.
Right. Yep. And again, less is more in that case.
And again, my best side there we just saw. The back
and this
of my
also, that
head.
whole him interrupting you was also not originally planned that way. It used to be that you finished introducing a song, and then Andrew, once you were finished, Andrew started playing behind as background of the shot of you, and you turned around. And that was actually Cooper's idea Cooper Samuelson, another producer's idea to heighten the stakes by having Andrew just literally interrupt you mid-sentence, which is so much better.
Yeah. And the song that I'm introducing is Caravan, and it actually does begin with a brief drum solo, and then brings in the bass and the piano, as we're seeing here. So, he did interrupt me, but it's not like he's going totally off the reservation. He's playing the tune that's next up. He just disrespected me by
that's
jumping in there.
That's how you think it is.
Am I right? Am I wrong?
Well, no, I think that was part of the change we made, is that you're introducing, now we're going to slow it down a little bit. So you were going to introduce, but in the script it was different.
No, I'm introducing Caravan. I'm introducing Duke Ellington. If he hadn't cut me off, I was about to say, most of y'all have heard of a cat named Duke Ellington.
Yeah, no, that's what was in the script. And then we decided to add in an ADR. We added in, we're going to slow it down a little bit, get rid of the Duke Ellington part, and suggest that maybe you were about to cue off. I mean, we don't know for sure, but maybe you were about to cue off a ballad or something. And so that he's truly
manipulative,
truly an asshole.
That's a great shot, too.
But I like that you think you had even more control.
I have no illusion. I'm an actor. I have no illusion of any control over anything. We do our thing, and then you bastards cut it to shreds.
Just show some gratitude, JK, please.
There's Cal with the glasses on the head.
Yes,
I love
Cal.
that look.
Again, all these guys. There's Marcus Henderson on the bass. Just all these guys are real and just great. I mean, shooting this was both very stressful and a lot of fun. We were on this stage for 3 days, so that included all the upswinging stuff, the solo, the stuff in the green room. So it included a lot of stuff. So we had to kind of really run like mad. But I remember when Tom...
What was this guy's name? You remember names? I don't know. This guy was great, the trombone player.
Oh, the trombone. Yeah. It was great. Again, another pro player.
Yeah. I mean, he could play. This is, sweetened, I assume, in the final mix. But I mean, this guy could play this whole solo. I mean, this. Is...
Oh yeah. No, all these guys could play this stuff. Most of what you're hearing was pre-recorded at the Firehouse, this great recording studio in Pasadena, which you came by and visited. I remember. During prep to sort of see what we were putting on the mic.
Well, and I was already worried about my my little ditty in the club too.
Yes.
So I wanted to be part of recording that and make sure that
we didn't make it too
the
hard for
sweetening
you.
wasn't too sweet.
And here is Fletcher's arc. Of course, there's all this ambiguity, I guess, to a sense of to what extent did Fletcher plan for Andrew to kind of come and take the reins. And,
yeah, again, to me it felt like, and this is a question that comes up often in like Q&As after screenings and stuff. Was it manipulation? Was it this? Was it that? And to me, it was win-win. I either humiliate this kid,
Yep.
and beat him into the ground, never to rise again, and that's fine. That's revenge, and that's satisfying, and that's okay. But if he's able to actually get up off the mat, then maybe I finally got my Charlie Parker. Love this guy too. All the looks of all these guys. I mean. The looks and the fact that that's the guy that was with the screening, the third sax there.
Oh, really?
Yeah. All these guys.
Miles loves to make fun of you for your face here.
Well, this is like the most animated and goofy we actually see Fletcher in the movie. Just digging this tune, and the whip pans.
Alon, the gaffer, one of the gaffers, took a little behind-the-scenes shot of me. I was standing behind the camera operator, basically tapping his shoulder every time to cue him when to whip pan.
I remember that.
And because
Alon is one of the few names I actually remember.
Because it was so frequent, they decided it looked like I was what do you call it? Like a rattlesnake, like a snake going in for because I guess my
or like a pestering little 4-year-old,
or like a pestering, just kind of going, and then the camera would just whip back and forth. It's quite a funny thing to look at from the behind the scenes vantage point. And then
maybe that'll be on the extras too. That shot.
Oh, one can only hope.
I love the whole kinetic is a word that people often use. Regarding the whole movie, really. I mean, and it begins with the opening sequence, not the very opening, but the scenes of Miles walking on the streets of New York and the way that's cut and stuff. But it really culminates here in this solo and shots like those, like that quick shot of the 3 different drum heads. Cutting
and
back
again,
to
I
Miles.
just have to sort of give the credit again to Sharon, the DP, and Tom Cross, the editor. I mean, certainly cutting this whole sequence, Tom and I, we just cut the sequence during a long course of sleepless nights, kind of working into 6 a.m. into 7 a.m.
Not only was this film shot in 19 days, but Damien and Tom had less than 10 weeks to completely cut it together so that they could get under the wire for Sundance.
I remember one of the
so we could go win a bunch of awards.
One of the first notes we got on the scene. You'll like this, J.K. It's a very Fletcher note. Was he's good at drums. We get it. Sort of cut the scene by half. To be fair, the scene was a little bit longer. We did make some music edits, but it is one of those scenes where, and it's a little bit of the arguments kind of early on, where you kind of, I say less is more a lot. In this scene, I think more is more. I think this is one of those scenes where you kind of have to sort of go past the point where I guess a normal movie showing a good solo would go.
Well, and again, this is one of those scenes where you understand why people were not throwing millions of dollars at Damien to make this movie. Wait a minute, the movie ends with a 10-minute drum solo? Yeah, okay, next. Love this shot. Love this shot of Paul. So beautiful. God, just makes you cry. Such a beautiful dad moment there. Watching his son, the monster that has been created and all the levels that makes him feel. That was a cool moment.
And here's the replacement dad.
Right. Yeah.
Who comes in and picks Miles up when he falls. In a sense, picking the
Miles,
symbol up.
It's the ride so hard that I have to go there and readjust it. Is that the ride or the crash?
That was a crash.
I knew that.
I'm glad you learned nothing on the shoot.
I don't have to play the fucking drums.
And here, one other funny kind of, film nerd thing that I liked doing here was we wind up ending the movie with exactly the same audio that we begin it with. The single stroke roll building into which is about to start now, building into a sustained buzz. It's a very Buddy Rich trick. Buddy Rich used it to end a lot of his solos, and as a aspiring drummer and Buddy Rich worshiper myself, I tried it many times, and it's really hard because it's not a double stroke roll, it's a single stroke roll, which is harder to achieve that buzz with, and very few people can actually do it the way Buddy did. So it's kind of a drummer's pissing contest in a way, is how well you can do that kind of roll.
So it's your film nerd and your music nerd.
And my drum nerd
really,
thing,
your
yeah.
drum nerd.
It's me geeking out in all ways in one. Look at that little flicker you do with your hand. It's so kind of somewhat sexual.
Yeah, there was, people occasionally comment on the whole. Is there an undercurrent of homoeroticism here, or
I think it's an undercurrent
going along with the homophobia? Is that what that's all about? And again, it was never conscious on my part, but it's
right.
totally legitimate
It's definitely there,
as the way people perceive it.
I remember my conductor. Certainly it is not usual for conductors to kind of conduct, so to speak, drum solos, but I think that's part of what's fun about this. And certainly my conductor helped me construct some of my drum solos, and he would kind of tell me when to go to the cymbals. He would do basically the same kind of hand motions that you do, and so I remember the moments of joy that I had as a drummer were during drum solos. I'd feel fear all the time, but I was actually good at some of these kind of climactic sort of drum solos and the wall of cymbals sort of tricks. And
you were going to end this commentary talking about what a good drummer you are, really?
Yes, actually. Can we talk more about that?
Let's talk more about Miles'
Actually,
face.
the whole
Look at this. Here's my smile.
You
can see it in my eyes. Yeah, bitch.
Yeah, we don't even need your lips to know you're smiling. That's how ridiculous your face is. And we always knew the movie would end with exactly this shot, so it was kind of fun. That's basically probably the one part of the initial cut of the movie that did not change at all, was it ended exactly with that shot.
Well, and I mean, the movie ends with, how many movies really end with the climax? It's such a beautiful ending.
Tom and I talked
Miles Teller can stop Bill. What the?
I was not aware of that. I was not aware.
Sure.
Please, JK. I was not aware. Tom and I, and actually we just talked about this in the short. I remember because Jason Reitman came up with this analogy when we were cutting the short, and Tom and I wound up using it as a total refrain when cutting this, is that, Chris Rock will finish a set with a mic drop, and then we just refer to it like, mic drop. We needed the film equivalent of a mic drop sort of moment, and the whole idea behind that is you leave them wanting more. You leave them there's this sort of foolish notion, I think, in a lot of films that you have to have a denouement.
Yeah.
And you don't. Most of the time, you really don't.
No, but it's one of those things, again, it's one of those things you go to a studio and they're like, okay, where's the denouement? And you go, there isn't one. And they go, all right, next.
They've already gone next when you told them it's about a jazz drummer. So you haven't even gotten that far.
If you managed to get that far.
If you managed to get that far. Have you seen Death Proof?
I haven't seen anything. Were the Detroit Tigers involved?
No, but Kurt Russell is involved.
Oh, I like him. His dad played baseball.
Death Proof is it's one of my favorite Tarantino movies that literally ends with like a 15-minute car chase that's just incredible. And as soon as the car chase is over, boom, it cuts to the credits. It's the most energized. I remember seeing it in college, and that's ultimately subconsciously probably where this ending came from, of just sort of wanting to end a movie with that kind of raw, sort of just smack you in the gut kind of volition.
So you're giving away all the shit you stole in this movie. I mean, people think you're a creative genius, and it's just like all stolen.
There's no such thing as originality. You're always stealing. I actually do think that. I think I try to just kind of put every movie I love into the stuff I do. But I remember the fun thing about ending a movie this way, ending a movie with a drum solo or with a jazz concert. Tom and I would talk about like how, you're always trying to kind of do the best version of whatever you're doing. You're trying to make the definitive whatever. If you're going to do a car chase, good luck making the greatest car chase ever. If you're going to do a boxing match, good luck topping Raging Bull.
Right.
There's all these kind of sequences where it's kind of like, well, you You have fun with that. Good luck topping that. And but lucky for me, there's not that many extended drum solos on film in fiction film. So
yes, sort of a Woodstock.
So that's what I do.
documentary.
I try to pick something where the standards are so low
or non-existent.
or non-existent, so it's really easy to just make the best one.
Wow, good call.
Yep.
Nicely done.
Yep. It's all very pragmatic. I actually wanted to make a movie about a boxer, but I watched Raging Bull and decided, fuck,
It's been done.
gonna be too hard.
Yeah, that's okay. Miles is doing it. And here we are. The first time I saw the film was at Cannes, just to place drop a little bit because I didn't get to go to Sundance where it premiered because I was too busy working for a living. But the audience at Cannes, they're just hitting their stride as they applaud at this point in the credits. And Damien and I are standing there, you know, and they got spotlights on us, and we're not up on stage. We're just in the middle of the orchestra where we
so
saw the
awkward.
film from. It was incredibly awkward.
But
And we
kinda
stood up
wonderful.
and we took a bow and we sat down and we stood up and we took a bow and we hugged each other and we stood there and we acknowledged the applause and we sat. And it was unlike anything I certainly have ever experienced. And people who had been at Cannes for years and years and years said the same thing. The audience at Cannes just went berserk, and the response was really, really something wonderful. I love that we got the last special thanks there to Hank Levy Jazz and the Hank Levy
Oh yeah, I
Legacy
mean, I
Band.
should give a
Such
shout
big
out
part of this
to
movie.
the actual Hank Levy estate, Stuart Levy, who allowed us to use not only the music but called a movie Whiplash.
Yeah.
That's all. This was a chart that I played in high school, and that meant a lot to me. So that and Caravan were the two licensed charts that we kind of built the rest of the movie around.
And we got to meet them in New York. They came to the screening in the.
Yeah,
in
you
the
met them there, right?
party
The whole
in New
family.
York, yeah.
I'd met Stuart earlier, but I'm always a little bit ahead of the curve.
Yeah, no,
of
you're
you.
way ahead of me, certainly.
Yeah. Miles is as well.
Miles who?
Teller.
Huh. Unfamiliar with him.
Yeah. No, just focus on Miles Davis. It's the only Miles.
Miles
you
Davis.
need-
I
you
assume
need-
that's who
you-
we're
you
talking
need to
about the whole
focus on.
time. Is it the Miles Teller? Who is he again?
Miles Teller.
He was involved in the filming somehow?
He's kind of your sidekick in the film. Do you remember? Sort of meager
Oh, my little bitch.
sidekick. Yeah, the little bitch.
Yeah, he was all right.
Yep.
We're out.